Greg, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, James.
Greg, Organigram has been around pretty much since the beginning, yet remains, by all accounts, an undervalued marijuana operation. Why is it so undervalued, and what's happening that might change that?
I think we've made a lot of changes recently. So potentially on the value, I think, being an East Coast based company has got some real pluses for us operationally in terms of lower costs, lower power costs, having a great employee base, and accessing some government assistance funding in New Brunswick. We may have been a bit off people's radar a little bit by being on the East Coast, but we really are a national player in scope. I mean, a third of our patients are in Western Canada, a third of them are in Ontario. So on the medical side, we're really a key national player. What we've done to make changes to kind of really pick up our position in terms of getting on people's radars, we've done two recently bought deals. One was announced yesterday, so between the two of them, raising over $150 million.
Great.
And we were fully funded already for a series of expansions that we're going through right now. So we have an additional 102,000 square feet of three-tiered growing, and that's one of the things that makes us very different.
The cubic foot becomes more important.
Exactly,
than
right?
foot,
So you don't want to talk square footage, you want to talk about canopy space and how
Right.
much you're growing. So it's a great. So that'll come online for us in January, pending Health Canada approval, but we're going through that process. That'll bring us up to 16,000 kilos in production annually going forward. And then we've got another expansion that'll be online by the end of May that'll bring us up to 25,000 kilos. So from an indoor producer perspective, that puts us in the top 2-3 in terms of indoor production, and we're really shifting to a high quality premium flower. And the bought deal that we announced in December is going to fund an additional expansion in Moncton, which will bring up our capacity over the next 18 to 24 months to almost 65,000 kilos.
Wow, okay, so you're definitely amping up the capacity.
Absolutely.
And you're going to be a global player by the sounds of it. Do you have you made any moves into other markets at all internationally?
Yeah, it's a great question. So our previous Chief Operating Officer, Larry Rogers, has moved into a VP of International and Business Development role. And part of the bought deal that we just announced yesterday, a significant portion of that funds will go to potential international expansion, as well as possible expansion in other jurisdictions within Canada. We're actively pursuing those right now, looking at what makes sense for us. So between the two of them, and also possibly a hemp production, we've seen some other companies make those moves. We've been working closely with a few hemp companies to evaluate that. We haven't finalized any of those agreements. Our approach on the international perspective, we've seen a lot of companies that are exporting currently. We're looking at export opportunities, but I think the more prudent play is to really look at, can you find a facility or build a facility in a jurisdiction that makes sense and gives you access to the European market? Really, it's Europe that is the key that people are looking at, not to say Australia is not important, other jurisdictions aren't. So that's what we're very active in doing right now, is evaluating where would we domicile a facility in Europe, and then how would we approach kind of expansion within the EU marketplace.
Interesting. Well, that's an ambitious strategy. Do you worry at all, as in your position as CEO, about the proliferation of licenses that Health Canada has implied that they're going to triple the number of ACMPR licenses granted in 2018?
It's a great question. I think one of the things that investors and the public need to consider when they're looking at companies is that there's a steep learning curve in terms of growing medical cannabis and growing cannabis on a large scale. All of the existing companies, including, as you said, Organigram, we started back in 2014, one of the original licensees under the MMPR. So getting to the point where you're producing a consistent product, at a high quality product, takes a long time. So I think many of those new kind of cultivation licenses that are coming to place or will come into place in the future, many of those players are going to have a learning curve that's going to really leave them behind for a significant period of time. It's going to be challenging for them to catch up to the existing players in many aspects. So,
do you think that's sufficient to offset the implied glut of marijuana coming down the pike? If even a percentage of those new growers get capacity online, I mean, we're already looking at 2 million kilograms in funded capacity from the publicly traded ACMPR growers.
Right.
We can't see what the progress is of the non-public ones, the 80 that exist now, but if they're implying at least another 160, I mean, to me that just looks like an avalanche of marijuana coming towards the market.
And I think your point's well taken in terms of it's not just about producing volume, right? And that's why our real focus at Organigram is to focus on quality. So I joined the company as CEO in March. I've been in the marketplace for 3 years as previous CEO of another licensed producer. And my approach has been to really focus on improving our quality, increasing quality. The recent Canadian Cannabis Awards with Lyft, we actually won 2 of the 6 product categories, including top sativa. We'd never been nominated in the past. So it really shows kind of our shift to quality. And for us, that's a differentiator. We also recently launched a premium premium hand-trimmed flower in the medical space called the Edison Project by OGI. And part of that launch was to see, is there a product at a high price, at a premium price at $15 per gram, but it is a differentiated product, and is the marketplace willing to accept that? And the response has been overwhelmingly positive to that to date.
And what is the essence of the differentiation they cause for the premium price?
Yeah, so it's a combination of a couple factors. One is it's hand-trimmed, so 100% hand-trimmed. It's also very large flowers. We kind of treat the plant as a source, not everything on the plant is the same. So we're taking harvests and in certain strains and taking the very large, significantly large flowers in terms of bringing those to market. And then in terms of the profile of them, they've got high terpene profiles, which is desirable certainly in the medical market, but we know will be very desirable in the adult rec market. So our second key element is going to be in terms of branding and differentiation, right? We all talk about brands in the space. We're very focused on leveraging a relationship that we have with TGS, or the Green Solution in Colorado, where we, as the market moves into edibles and extract base, vaporizer cartridges, vaporizer pens, those areas, that partnership will allow us to bring those products with proven formulations, with proven variability in terms of what the cannabinoid profile is, in a manner that is in a child-resistant package and that has been tested, in a manner that we believe we'll be able to do faster than other companies, and that's a brand that's well established in the U.S.
Right. Okay. So that's interesting. So you're making moves into the U.S. edibles market. You've got this strategy for Europe. You've got all these different things going on. Are you confident that it's just a matter of time till the market appreciates that Organigram is where there's still a lot of compressed value, perhaps?
Well, I think two things. So one, I'll just clarify. We have a partnership with a company in Colorado, and that really is a knowledge transfer and technique transfer and product transfer. So we're not invested in them per se. We just have an agreement with them in terms of how that's structured. But to answer your question, in terms of, I think one of the challenges we face is, as I alluded to up front, producing on 3 levels. A lot of people they look at what square footage, and everybody makes announcements about their square footage. What they should be looking at, and many of the analysts, as you know, in the space are looking at, what's your funded capacity, right? So what do you have capital to build out, and are you hitting the timelines in terms of what that build out is? And then again, how do you convert that to your product and your brands and everything? So certainly when I meet with investors, when I present at conferences, I presented at a conference here in Toronto yesterday, the response is incredibly positive, and we've got investors that have been with us from the start and continue to build their positions and are in us for the long term.
Okay, well that's great update, Greg. Thanks for coming in today.
No problem. Thanks, James. Appreciate it.